Hello friends, it's Jay, and I want to share with you today 7 scriptures about the grace of God. Well, the grace of God, you say, what exactly is that? Well, grace, it's explained to us as this: unmerited favor of God. Well, what does unmerited mean? Well, unmerited means that we didn't earn it. And so when we look at scripture and we look about the grace of God, it means that we receive grace that we didn't earn. The first scripture we have today, it comes out of Ephesians 2, verses 4 and 5. It says, "But God, being rich in mercy, because of the great love which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved." Wow. What does that mean? Well, that means that we didn't earn it. And that means that God gave us grace. He gave us salvation, and he did that through grace. What that means is that we were dead in our trespasses, that we deserved the punishment of death. And we did that because we were doing sin and mistakes against a holy God. But God wanted to bring us back into himself, and that's why Jesus came and became a sacrifice for us all. So we look at the scripture and we see grace. We see that grace comes from Jesus. In fact, that's the very next scripture. It talks about in John 1 about the grace of God there. It says, "The Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory. Glory as the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth." So when we start looking at this, John 1:1 talks about Jesus coming onto the scene as a creator God and as a God who emptied himself of his divine privilege and came to earth as a man. He came to earth full of grace, meaning he came to love us when we didn't deserve it, and truth. He came to call us to the truth, which is to live the way of God. And so those are two things that he came to do for us. Next, we look at this piece. It's in 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9. It says this, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." This is the Apostle Paul, and he's talking to the church about himself suffering with something he's dealing with. But as he goes to God, God says, listen, even though you're suffering, you are learning a lesson. You are being made perfect. You are being made stronger in this weakness. And so he's seeing that his grace is sufficient. God's grace is sufficient for Paul in that situation. I think there's a lot of situations that you and I both go through, and we don't quite understand what lesson we're learning. And I don't think it's till after the fact that we will understand the lesson. But in the middle of it, we experience the grace of God as we look to him for that grace as the source. Here again in Scripture, it talks about out of Romans 6, verse 12, that we're called to be those who don't sin and let our body be used for sin. Instead, we're supposed to be those who live for Christ. It talks about it here in verse 12. It says, "Let not sin therefore reign in your mortal body, to make you obey its passions. Do not present your members to sin as instruments for unrighteousness, but present yourselves to God as those who have been bought from death to life, and your members to God as instruments for righteousness." It says, "For sin will have no dominion over you, since you are not under law, but under grace." Wow, I love this piece. It's saying, hey, don't sin, don't be called to these things, because you have been redeemed. You've been made righteous. So live like it. And you've been done, that has been happened for you through grace. And as a result, we are not having to live under the law, which is very strict. Instead, we live with our heart to God in relationship with him. It talks about in Hebrews 4, it says this in verse 16, "Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in the time of need." So you're a person who needs the grace of God, you need to experience God's grace. Well, seek him and go to what it says here is called the throne of grace. Go before God and ask, "Lord, I need more of your grace, more of your love, more of your peace in my life." And you'll receive it. You'll find it there. We see again, it says this in James 4, verse 6 and 7. He says, "But he gives more grace. Therefore," it says, "God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble." He says, "Submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you." So it's exactly what we've been talking about. This idea of those who need more grace, he'll give you more grace. In fact, it says if you humble yourself, meaning bringing yourself down out of pride, out of being built up and thinking you can do everything yourself, instead of seeking God, you will find the grace you're looking for. And it says that he gives grace to those who are humble. And it says as we submit ourselves, God will fight on our behalf, and we will not see the devil win in our lives. This last scripture we want to talk about goes back to Ephesians 2, this time in verse 8, and it says this, "For by grace you have been saved through faith." And it's not of your own doing, it is a gift from God, as not as a result of works, so no one may boast. Wow. So it's saying straight away that grace is a gift from God. It means we can't earn it. Man, there's lots of people that will tell you that you can earn the grace of God, that you can do enough good things or enough good works or earn your way in by being a good person. And that's not what it says in the Bible. It says that instead, grace is given as a gift, and it's only made available through the work of Christ for us. So when we look to grace and we look to these 7 scriptures, we learn a lot. We learn that grace is sufficient for us, and that grace is there and available for us. If we seek God, we will find grace. And it also talks about how we can't earn his grace, but instead it's given to us as a gift. Grace is a gift. My prayer for you today is that you would experience the overwhelming grace of God in your life. Know this, we love you very much here at Cornerstone. God bless you. Have a great week.